Welcome to Tantasy TV, second part of our pre-season podcast. We're Tantasy. We told you before it's our league. Just a little bit draft night. We talked and we said we had a draft night. Now we use the snake draft, Mike. The snake draft means that if you pick one, you'll pick one, and then you'll pick last in the second round.
Yeah.
If you pick last in the first round, you'll pick first in the second round, and then you'll pick if you're first in the first round, you'll be first in the third round, and then last in the fourth round.
It does work. It does actually work. I mean, there's a couple other ways that people have suggested in the past of maybe trying to change it, but it does seem to work out for even the 8th place as well as the first place.
Mathematically, it means that you all have a chance with 5.5. No matter where you draft, your average draft position is 5.5. So that means
mathematically looking at it.
That means it's the perfect mathematically fair way.
Yep.
To that. Another way that is quite popular, and I'd love to move to it at some stage, is the auction, where you actually have a live auction with your mates, gambling. Well, you put money down for each player. You have a certain amount of money on draft.
Ain't gonna happen, mate. Ain't gonna happen.
I hear it's the full Tanty mode, because people want a player and they bid them up, and you get your mates and you can bid them up nice and high.
Don't think that's something that I would vote for, and obviously in our league, any changes to it is voted for. Whether we want other people coming into the league or actually, everything is voted for. Double point, captain, half point bench, everything is a vote amongst all the players.
And the beauty of that is that's why we like the bench, which has taken over the CEO. It allows you to customise your own league. You get to have your own choices. What we choose is how we play. We don't have someone saying this is what the people are going to get. Our league can vote. There is restrictions on how much you can change, but you can sort of have your own league and your own choices.
That's right. Yeah. Just quickly moving on to the nines, just before we go on any further.
Well, no, just quickly on the draft. Mike, how do you prepare for the draft?
Jesus. How do I prepare for the draft? I think some people can go overboard, but I think overboard is better than they're not doing enough preparation. You've got to, what would we pick? 25 players in one night each. Now you took about 8 players, that's a fair few players. So pretty much put down in a list. You have your front rows, your hookers, then you move into your back rows, and then all the other players, and you have almost 10 to 15 choices per player, and as someone chooses it, you cross them off, and in your own head you're building a team, and you write that down beside it about the players you're going to choose. It's bloody hard when you want to choose some players and you've got to cross out all these great players, but it's the only way to do it. And I look back into last season's stats and see what guys like Aaron Woods, what they were doing. So in a prop, I'll be looking for guys who can play front row, back row, with high stats, and that'll be my first choice. If I don't get them and I've got to cross them out and move on to the next one, that's when things adjust.
I think that you're 100% right there, Mike. One of the things that when you really get into it, one of the things you can look at mathematically is you can grade the value of a player, and you can take the points they scored last year or per game last year and multiply it by a positional value. So you might value props higher and halfbacks and fullbacks at a certain rate. You might say there's more centres that run closer, so they're only worth half of the points they get because it's closer to others. And it's quite an interesting way you can look at it, is to look mathematically at it and then add the value you put to the player. And that's your own choice in how you value your team. You might think front rowers are gold, or you might like to have backs. Some people can do it by just scoring points because they'll see a draft running where backs aren't getting taken, and you can just go for some real high value backs.
I think when you look at previous years, especially in NRL CEO, how we've been playing, teams that actually have a strong forward pack are the ones that have gone through the season and been towards the top. I mean, if you're getting a forward try for most of your forward pack, you're talking three, your front rows, plus your hooker, plus your three back rows. You're looking at 6 players getting so it's 24 points straight off the bat if you can get a decent forward pack.
And Mike, I think you've just highlighted a key position that you want to look for in the draft. Hookers. There's not a lot of 80-minute hookers that can get you the points regularly. There's too many platoon setups where there's 2 hookers with a bench hooker that's averaging 30 to 40 minutes and just kills you.
The Warriors this year, are we going to be playing Little Hawaiian Friend on the back of each other?
Well, off the Warriors, Auckland Nines coming up.
Wow.
Only a couple of weeks. Now we're on our Friday podcast thanks to Jim Beam. Cheers, Jim Beam. We've got the Nines coming up in a couple of weeks. You're off to it, Mikey?
I am. Along with a few of the other boys from our Tantasy League. And should be good. I mean, I've seen. I think the Tigers team came out today and it's looking pretty strong. The Warriors team came out last week. I think that a lot of the boys are bringing across a pretty strong team. I mean, guys like Farah are coming across. I think it's going to be exciting. I mean,
and you're going to it, Mike. I'm having to miss it. I'm racing that weekend, so I've got a ticket that's going to go up.
Wow.
I'll get it sorted out of mate.
I believe the tickets are pretty much sold out.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be an awesome weekend, and unluckily I'm missing it. Fantasy-wise, are you going to see anything out of this weekend that might push people up your draft order?
The only thing I'll see out of it is possibly the players that have moved clubs and seeing how they're gelling with guys inside and outside them. Maybe some of the under-20s players that have moved up and maybe seeing a bit of their how they're probably playing with their guys inside and outside them as well. I mean, you talk about some of those top under-20s players coming into it, and if they shine in the Nines, they got a pretty strong chance of actually playing in some of the preseason games.
Can I just stop you? So you're saying if we see players perform at the Nines, they're going to have more of a shot to make the NRL side. It's going to be a spot where some of the under-20s, when they're playing these senior players, can prove they have their strength against these bigger and older guys.
Yeah, I think there'll just be a little bit more. I mean, for a lot of these guys, it's a chance to show their attacking flair on a big stage. And
it's going to be a big stage. It's going to be a
good
event.
It's going to be a massive event. I think.
So watch the Nines.
Yeah,
definitely. Look for some low round draft picks out of it that I think you might get some surprises that you might think, hey, he's going to play later in the season.
Yeah,
this guy here is a great centre.
But I think what you're going to see is you're going to see some of these guys actually really show, and I think it might be that inside chance for those players to actually make it into some preseason games, show a bit more of their wares, and you never know. They may make the round one sides. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, it's round one. It's not about preseason, but it's making that team in round one. I mean, we've done our draft picks before, and we might have had 6 or 8 players in that side not make the round one teams.
Quickly, just on that note, there, drafting's about to start on the bench. They're going to open up the leagues very shortly, so you can start your drafting next day or so. So you can go on the bench and start having early draft. We're right before we have our draft.
Have we got a date for ours?
We're usually the Tuesday or Wednesday just before the draft.
Before the Friday game.
Sorry, yes, before the first Friday game. Yep. So we'd like to have the Wednesday because then we can see teams named on Tuesday. Team naming Tuesday.
Obviously, yeah.
And then you've got an idea that at least you're drafting players that are getting played, especially in some of those lower rounds. Because in the past we've been a week before that. And you'll have 3 or 4 players that don't get named.
Just a little bit on that. Injured players and picking them up in the draft because they'll be playing later in the year. I mean, I'm just asking you straight out. I mean, I hear rumours that Kevin Watt possibly be injured. Don't know for sure. It's just a bit of a rumour on the on Facebook and whatnot at the moment. Picking up possibly half-injured players or guys that aren't quite fit, but top-of-the-line players.
With that, I just think you've got to discount them. So in the last year would be a perfect example would be Ben Barber. Ben Barber, usually first, second round pick, top try scorer from the year before, sort of came into the 6th round, so a 5-round drop. That's when I thought that's a value pick, and I picked him up. And that's I'm looking to fill a team for the whole season, and I need them later on. If it's a serious ACL or something like that, I might not be so keen. But if it's a little niggle and they're out for 4 weeks into the season from they're injured now and they get 4 weeks, I just sort of take that into thing. I want to make sure I've got 17, of course,
That's
or
exactly
well,
right.
probably 22. But if I've got 2 or 3 I know are coming back, and I've got 5 rounds of value out of them, it's worth a flyer for you sometimes.
One question before we move on to the rest
teams?
of our team breakdown, and on the back of injuries, guys like Yao Yi, one of the most shocking injuries ever seen on TV, and it was pretty hard to even watch it.
If you've got a strong
Guys
stomach,
like
YouTube it. If you've got a strong...
have a little look at Yao Yi's injury.
That's not nice. I
nice
wouldn't actually recommend YouTubing it, but you can choose to.
I think he came back and possibly maybe played a game for the some of their undersides, or he was doing a bit of a run around. How do you think he's going to go this year? Do you think? I mean, they're picking him in the starting Rugby League Weekly. Are putting him in the starting side.
A great player. I hope he makes it. Was playing below Queensland Cup last year.
Yeah.
Big jump in grades there. If he comes back, good on him. If you watch that YouTube video, you'll agree exactly what I've said.
Yeah.
Any player like that has skill, you don't want to see it robbed by injury.
Not with an injury like that. That
No.
was more. Yeah.
Well, injuries, teams, Eels. We're up to the Eels today. First one. Mikey's favourite in the shower was his dad. It's not. He's just come back from his mission. Will Hopper Wati.
There it is, right there. Mate,
Thumb. You really like it.
thumb, mate.
Yeah.
This one.
Well, like it a bit thicker.
Mate, Rugby League Weekly again. I mean, it's one of our good reads. Right there.
We paid for this one. We'd love a free one.
Rugby League Weekly's pretty open about the fact that Hopper Wade is going to be coming back with a pretty high fitness level. I think that was maybe one thing that people have to take into account with guys that are coming back after a couple of years out, or even injuries and whatnot, is their fitness levels. They're stating that Will Hopper Wade they've got no question about his fitness. It's just how long it's going to take for him to get his game face on.
Quickly on Hopawati before we go into the rounds. My only question with him, I think he will be fit. He's playing for a new team with new other players around him. Can he fit into that structure? But rounds, were you looking at him? What are you thinking?
I'm still. I mean, originally I thought about it and would pick him maybe around 5 or 6 as one of those sort of winger centre sort of players that, or even fullback. Well, not fullback with Haney, but 5 or 6. But I'll probably pop him a little bit lower than that, based on the fact that he didn't play last year or the year before.
You just mentioned. I agree totally with what you've said. Hayne. You mentioned Hayne. Is he going to have a better year than last year?
Look, if you take the Rugby World Cup into account, I can only see Hayne getting better and better. I mean, it's hard to say because it's. Hey, he's a Blues player for a start, mate. He's Blues all the way. But I see him going around 1 or 2. 9? No, mate, you're dreaming. You're fucking dreaming.
Oh, he won't make 9. Oh, I mean, Origin 9, but round 9. No, I don't think he make round 9. No, definitely a good player, quality, lot of value with the offensive stats. Try assists, he's extremely good at line break assists. If you're highly valued that way in the team, he is a superstar in any league. First few rounds.
When he does the home playing, when he racks up that Parramatta crowd at home, he seems to grow.
Well, he's one of those players that
bounces on.
Well, he'll get you 10 points one week and nothing the next. And then he'll go on a streak of getting 10, 10, 10, and then he'll get nothing for 3 weeks. He's a very good player, though. I think one of the big questions of what Hayne will do and Hopawati will be dependent on what they do with their 7 this year. Chris Sando back.
Yeah.
Gambling, other problems, personal problems, weight issues, heart. Can the new coach, Arthur, get him ready to go and get him happy?
Chris Sando, we've discussed this a little bit, and I think he's one of those backup guys. You can pick yourself up a Jonathan Thurston or a Cooper Cronk. He'd be a decent guy to have as a backup because you just don't know what's going to happen with the Eels this year. And I mean, I've got a good feeling about their team. I think they've got the hallmarks of not being the bottom team. I got a feeling they're not going to...
Top 8?
Maybe not top 8, but...
Okay, yeah, so you've got them in that lower group, but yeah, that's fine.
I think they've still got the ability and their players to be able to actually knock some of those top teams off on their day.
So just back to the draft, you're saying Sando, you're looking for a reserve, so what you're saying after round 15 or so? If you're taking him then...
Look, I'd be surprised. I mean, in the last few years, 7s have been picked up pretty quick, and people that have already picked up a good 7 have already gone after a backup 7 or a backup kicker in that regard. You know, if you picked up an Adam Reynolds, a Sando second pickup, if you've already got your top line back rows and forwards.
Well, just quickly on that, we play a 20 points, NRLCO / the bench puts down how many points each kicker gets. Our league, we're quite extreme. We let 20 so that we can have all those good players playing every week. A lot of leagues only, and standard leagues are normally 10-point leagues.
Is that right?
10-point leagues, so Champions League plays that way. So that's where we talk about some of these players. You might value them a lot lower because they've got a lot of kick points and how you use them.
Maybe there's something we could look at this year to make it maybe that little bit tougher, is maybe dropping that kicker points from 20 to say 15. That gives you the opportunity to have a front line kicker at say 8-9, which is Michael Gordon and the like, with a 90-odd% kicking rate, and then it leaves you with a pretty low backup. It might make it a bit tougher.
It's interesting. Moving on quickly to the Panthers. We've watched him since he's 17. Elijah Taylor, gone to the Panthers. What are your thoughts? Is he going to perform for Cleary?
Oh, I think so, mate. He's played under him before. I think Rugby League Weekly's actually chucked him in at 13 in their prediction team, and I can only see him moving forward with the Panthers. I mean,
Taylor. This is all you need to know about Taylor. If you can look at him. Oh, hello, Cat. We'll get rid of you.
Yeah, get out of it, mate. Hey, bloody kids.
Our introduction to the cat. We were talking about Elijah Taylor. If he gets the minutes, he will score. He will score enough if he gets the minutes.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be all about that. Another one to talk about in their back row very, very quickly, Bryce Cartwright.
Yeah.
If Cartwright gets minutes as well, he will get the stats. He's been an under-20 superstar.
Under-20 superstar coming through. Next step is in the Panthers, Jamie Soward. Personally, myself, he's under Ivan Cleary. He worked well underneath Wayne Bennett.
Structured approach.
Yep. And he has openly admitted that Bennett and Cleary have very similar coaching styles. So I see him having a pretty good season. It all depends though. I mean, there's a couple other players to consider in those in the halves, and that's Peter Wallace joining the club, and Isaac John, who did a fantastic job at the end of last season. Also an ex-Warrior.
Quickly, Soward, where are you taking him in the draft?
I think...
Is he a backup or is he a starting player in your team?
In my personal team?
Yes, in your personal team.
If I'm choosing him, I'd be choosing him sort of high to mid.
But are you choosing him as a starter or as a backup?
I'd have to choose him as a backup at this stage.
Okay, I agree, 100%. Backup player.
Yeah.
I
think it's going to take them half the season to get their gelling together with the amount of new guys they've got on their side.
We're saying backup player. I think he's a great backup player to have, because if he starts performing, and the Panthers, I think, have some points in them with some of the backs they've picked up, he could be one that you'll bring into the starting side and allow you to trade off a high range player to get a position in another strength. On to the Rabbitohs.
Mate, the Burgess brothers. What do you think?
4 of them. I think all 4 will play a few more games this year. Sam, back row, front row. It's hugely valuable, that back row, front row. Allows you that flexibility.
I think in saying that, any back row, front row combination in the player is actually advantageous throughout the whole year.
Well, you can actually, when I talk about the stats earlier in the draft, you can actually add that as a component, so they'll get a bonus 0.2 or something like that for multiple positions. It's hard in some positions. When you have players that are 7 and 6, it sucks it up, because you usually have a lower value number of players in those positions. But in front row, back row, definitely it's worth a lot because you get a lot of those players allowed in your team selection. So front row, back row players don't take up so much as, say, a half back 6 combination will take up 2 in a position you only get 3 players.
In fantasy rugby league with the NRL or the bench now, it's we have a maximum of 25 players, and you can only have so many forwards or so many front rows, so many back rows. So having that front row, back row taken up is by one player means you can move them around quite a bit and have the versatility.
Okay, quickly, so Sam Burgess, you're saying first couple of rounds?
I'm saying first couple of rounds, mate. Yeah, definitely.
Brother George?
I think those guys are probably mid to low. Again, we talk about it all the time. It's the minutes that these guys are going to get means how fast you're going to get that dominant forward and those 4 points that you get for it.
I agree with what you're saying there. I think the 2 other brothers, if you draft them, good luck to you. I wouldn't draft them at all. I would wait for them to start playing a few more minutes and then pick them up. If you want to take a late round flyer on one in the 25th round, well, hey, look, you're pretty low there and you are mining for some gold. I don't know if it's this year, but I see them having a lot.
One thing you got to remember about Sam Burgess too, when you are picking him up, and the reason why he is so high up in the draft, he does not play State of Origin, so he's there to play, barring injury, for every single round of the season.
Yeah,
and that's it's a pretty big thing.
Now, a question: player that I think is a pivotal player for the Bulldogs' chances this year, Rabbitohs' chances, this year, Josh Reynolds.
Mate.
Adam Reynolds.
Adam Reynolds will play Adam Reynolds. I put Josh next to it because Josh was the young man in our fantasy league or Tantasy league.
It is Josh Reynolds really after he picked him up last year.
Yeah, exactly. Josh picked him up in the first round. He drew first pick in the draft. He picked up Adam Reynolds to quite a few people who laughed at him. One.
Oh no, it wasn't just me.
Over there. Well, there's a few of us actually, but. I think for those of you who watch most of the Rabbitohs games during the year, I think you can pretty much say he did pretty bloody well.
Very good pick.
Yeah, very good pick. Can he do the same?
I've got only question I've really got for him is he proved it as a second year. He's got possibly Carey out on the outside.
It's another one, yeah.
Or Sutton. He's used to Sutton. Will Carey take any points away? Is there any problems there? Very good pick though, and. Yeah.
Moving on to the Dragons, mate. I mean, you can't go past Josh Dugan coming back. I wouldn't call it a second year with the Dragons. I'd probably call it...
Well, it's first off-season, the first time he's trained with the team a lot and played, just got to have time to set up what he can do.
Is it brave to say the hangover season, or is it maybe not?
Well, I think if there's no hangover, he'll be great. If there's hangovers, he'll be average.
He'll be there. Round pick?
I've got him in sort of the second lower of the second tier of fullbacks.
Yep.
GI, when we talked about the Rabbitohs before, high range, Slater, Barber, high range, second range. There's a nice little group there.
But he does have that potential.
Very much so. Very good potential player.
And obviously being...
potential, Sam Williams, playing at 7, moved over from Canberra.
Yep. Just a little fella. I think he could really he could shine there. He could shine. I think it all depends again about his. I mean, we always talk about the 7-9-1, and who was the 9 for the Dragons?
Well, they've got a couple of young guys, Mitch Rain and a couple other young guys.
Mitch Rain's another one who does the minutes. I think he was playing most of the 80 minutes last year. And
for periods
did all right. So I mean, if they can team up those 7-9-1 with Sam Williams, Dugan, and potentially Rain, they could go right, and Sam Williams will bounce off.
So Dugan, where are you taking? Sort of 6th, 7th round type thing?
Yeah, 5, 6, 7.
Sam Williams,
a little bit lower again. I think he's another one of those guys you'd probably pick up as a backup 7.
What we're saying here is really when we've talked about backup 7s regularly. Top range 7 is a very important thing to get because there's an awful lot we're just talking here. We're saying backup. There's not a lot we've been saying at top range. So early pick to get one of those top range ones, and then allow you to have these backups later on instead of trying to maybe have a couple in the middle rounds trying to pick up 2 that so you get one out of them.
And this is the battle in the draft. There's important positions that you've got to fill. There's not that many hookers around that do the minutes. There's not that many 7s and 6s around. So you've got to nail those positions. But if you sacrifice those positions, you could be sacrificing your forward pack, which we said before is, it's all important to build that team, but you've got to...
You can surprise people with what you can do with some good backs if the draft goes the way you want.
I proved that the year before last.
Yeah, it can be. It can also be a horror run because backs are less consistent. The thing the forwards are going to give you is consistency. Will they win you the big game? Yeah, it's an option you can look at. Mikey, you're talking about the top range. We've talked middle range there a lot of the 7s. Name your top sort of group there.
Well, Mark, I think you really got to look at Cherry Evans, Reynolds, Cronk, Sean Johnson for the Warriors. Thurston, whether he's a 6 or a 7 in your league, they're my top guys.
So I'm going to add one in there that I think you're sort of right there, Reynolds, Cronk and Johnson for sure. I'm not so sure about Cherry Evans. I'm going to put a player we're going to talk about in the next Team Roosters, Mitchell Pearce. I think he's in that same sort of level as Cherry Evans and sort of value him. You don't really rate him as highly?
No, I put Cherry Evans a little bit further up the rank, only because he does have that ability to score his own tries. He is a good backup player on the field, and does end up with a few tries. Possibly, I think with the Roosters, especially with Maloney and Pearce in the same team, I think a lot of the try assists, line breaks and whatnot are kind of half between them because they're so even.
Well, that's why I sort of think the same about Cherry Evans myself. I've got that feeling with him with the Manly side. You see so many points out of their centres with Lyon and foreigns there as well. It's a good player. They do rob some points from him. That's why I probably put Pearce and him quite close together. Manly a very good side at creating points for outside backs, back rowers and other positions but he is a very good player.
They are. I still see Foreign as being one of those structured players. He seems to run the structure of the team a lot more than what Daly Cherry does, and Cherry seems to jump in when there's a bit of flair required.
Now,
not saying that Foreign doesn't have that flair, but Cherry does seem to have that little bit of an edge there.
He's a very good player. Now, Mitchell Pearce, Roosters, one player to look for in their forward pack, Sonny Bill Williams.
Who?
SBW.
Oh, that guy. Yeah,
Money Bill.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you don't pay a guy that much money as much as what he's getting if you don't get the results. And I think it's pretty plain to see from last year that he can provide. No matter what you pay him, boxing, whatever, he seems to come through with the goods. And as a pick, what was it like with forward tries?
Yeah, the question with him is definitely on the forward try side of it. Does he play the minutes? I found a lot with him. He went off after 50, 60 minutes or only played 50, 60 minutes in a game when they were winning. Robinson looking after him. That's the question mark. In a tight game, he gets you all the stats. So when if he is playing those tight games, he's
so
good.
You're saying Sonny Bill might not get the minutes, they might take him off the field?
When they're winning, they sort of did a few times, and that can be a real killer.
Is that similar to when he's boxing? If he gets to sort of close to the 10th round, they just pull him out and cut the boxing off a little bit early, make sure he gets the title?
Now, when we're also talking about the Roosters, Tuivasa-Sheck,
mate,
as a Kiwi,
brilliant player. Finisher, one of the best finishers in the league. I mean, aside from that try from that Tigers fullback, the Tigers winger, that was one of the best tries I've seen in a long time. That was absolute brilliance. But Tuivasa-Sheck is as a winger,
I rate him sort of high mid-pack in the wingers. Yeah, if he plays as a fullback, he's going to get huge points, is my feeling. Can he knock out Anthony Minicello, who is a player that is taken on name, should not be taken in most drafts, depending on how deep you're drafting, or if taken, it is inconsistent with points in part the last couple of years. Been a good name that sort of doesn't do it in fantasy rugby league, or Tantasy for us.
I had him for half the season, had to let him go and pick up someone else. So
On to our next team.
the Warriors, mate.
Favourite team?
It's our team. Yeah.
Warriors. It's always interesting to look at the Warriors team. They show sometimes why a good rugby league team doesn't make a good fantasy team.
I think the word is good all-round team, especially with their forward pack.
Well, they don't make a fantasy team. They can look good on the field, but just to have so many options in front rows especially that allow them not to really get points.
Madalena, one of the top range sort of forwards in the league, consistent, just mows them down, keeps going forward all day long.
But doesn't play the minutes to get those points.
But doesn't play the minutes to be able to get you a forward try in our league, which I suppose is surprising somewhat.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing when you're playing fantasy. You do look at players differently than you do standardly. So out of the Warriors forward pack, questions we've got really there. We talked earlier about Luluai and if he's going to play and moving players and stuff like that. Simon Mannering, definitely a good back row pickup. Just
a question, who's going to replace Taylor on the back?
Well, you got Bakuya. Will Fletty play more minutes? If Fletty can get 80 minutes, he is a player to actually have in fantasy. If he doesn't play 80 minutes, he's not.
I had Fletty last year. He did get a few forward tries. He can do the...
It's minutes. If he gets the minutes, he does it.
Yeah, but there's that odd game where you got Fletty, and he may be one of those guys in our league where you chuck him on the bench because you just don't know what he's going to get. And every now and then he'll tune up maybe a try and maybe 3 try assists and a couple of line breaks, and
we'll all be happy that day if he does
that.
Even if he's not on my team, I'm happy. Until you're playing against him and you're watching it live in front of your face, your team winning and you losing. Or worse to me is actually when I see a player that I'm playing against my team, scoring right in front of me when I'm about 15 metres away from them when they touch down, and I just feel those 4 points being taken.
Talking about feeling happy on the field, mate, there's going to be one man that's going to be happy with his salary next year, and that's Mr. Tompkins himself.
Big question marks. He hasn't done it in the NRL. We've seen a lot of success out of English Premier players coming over here.
Yep.
In the forwards more than the backs, we have seen it. Gareth Ellis was an absolute quality player for the Tigers. We've had the past Hanley and others, the Burgess brothers and Graham. Very, very interesting prospect. Someone that will get drafted in your league maybe higher than you think he's going to go. And to me, he's another question mark, but could make grand final day in your house a happy day because he could do it. Or he might be sitting on your bench doing nothing.
You know, he's one of those players that you probably want to pick up. He ain't going to do shit for you in the first 4, 5, 6 rounds. But maybe in June, July, he might come right. He might feel like he fits in. Same as Luluai did last year. And he might just take off. And I think that if factor is something to weigh up. Definitely something to weigh, especially if you've got a wing fullback that can cover that position until he finds his feet.
As a centre, just very, very quickly, centre Conrad Harrell, will he have the impact he's had in his first stint in the NRL? Will he keep the tries up?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, mate. He's, I think he's got that size and that low centre of gravity power that probably isn't seen with a lot of players. I mean, Jared Croker is one of those players that defies belief with what he does during the game.
And one thing with Croker, if you've got a player playing Croker on the same side as a centre against him, very good to play them. Terrible on defence. Gets a lot of tries in on that side of Canberra.
Definitely. Look, moving on, one more. Tigers.
Our last team.
Do we carve out a spoon now, or do we just... We're going to share that amongst a couple of teams.
Luke Brooks is a big question mark for me if they do.
Luke Brooks is...
He's their new 7.
Gotcha.
He's looking good player. Under 20 star, played last year, scored a couple of tries, looked fantastic. He is a quality player. With Farah, Woods, those are probably the marquee ones. Yeah. You might mine a couple of low round picks out of their backs with no Faluma and their wingers and stuff like that. questions there that if they can fire, those wingers will score tries. They've got some finishes there. You talked about it with probably some of the best finishes of the year. That's where I'm looking for them as I'm mining. Farah front rower that plays 80 minutes in terms of hooker. Definitely a good pickup to me.
Luke Brooks, do you think he's going to be a front line starter? Is he going to...
He will be
is
for
that
the
what the talk is?
He's definitely for the Tigers. He will get 10 rounds. I hope that he lives up to potential.
You're saying he's going to get the chance to prove his worth?
If I went with a lower than our top range 7, I'd look at Luke Brooks as a possible pickup to just maybe give you that player you can bring in and trade away that mid-level one you've got, or trade him away later. I think he's a good player to look for in your draft. If you've gone mid-round on that first 7, you've got a new team, and you haven't got one of those premier ones we've just talked about.
Just between you and me, because we're the only ones that have basically talked about Luke Brooks, apart from the other...
Rugby League Week and...
Yeah, but aside from the fact, if the other boys haven't talked about him at all, would you leave him as late as you could in the draft? Pick him up right at the end as maybe one of those round 20, round 21, if he still hasn't been picked up? Leave him as late as you can, pick up your wingers, fullbacks, centres. Focus on those, knowing you've got yourself a top line 7 already.
Well, that's it. If you've already got one, you can. But then you might be sitting in that 15th round going, I don't have a top line one.
True.
Luke Brooks is good. And the person who's sitting there waiting for him misses out.
True.
If you saw him taken in the second round, you'd probably say, good luck, I'm not going to get him. But it all depends. If you've got that frontline player and you see he's there, you've got trading. Trade Doctor on NRLCO might give you some advice as well. You can get your options in, and you can, I think, just other people value them, and that's the beauty of the draft. As you value someone, you think, I'm going to get this guy, and then, he's gone.
I think if anybody actually needed any help with choosing your teams, NRLCO actually still have a guide.
The guides come out. Great information. First time players got to buy it. $8 Australian, I think.
We've been doing this for 7 years, and they came out with a guide. Read the book, went through it, and came out with some interesting information that probably I didn't really consider too much. And it's well worth the read. I mean, it was a couple of bucks.
$8.
$8. I mean, geez, it's the cost of a really cheap porn magazine. Give it a miss for a week. It's actually worth the read.
If you're not getting it free on the internet, well, good on you for buying a magazine still.
Wi-Fi.
But NRLCO, great one, gives you some great advice. So quickly through the Tigers, you're saying first or second round for Farah?
I'm saying second round.
Yeah, I'd say if you got him late picks in the first round, or if you're getting him late in the second round, you're going to be very happy to get that
I'm
pick
still
up.
picking first round picks for everybody who'll be a kicker. Depending on the amount of players. I mean, if we go with 8 players, you're going to have 8 top line kickers gone in the first round. I can pretty much guarantee that.
I don't think that 100%. I think Inglis and others will tempt people into taking top line players. There is a few players there that people will be tempted.
Well, I'm personally in love with Inglis, so I'll probably pick him up.
Yeah, you are. So Woods also on that team. High rate for him for you?
Third round.
Very good rated prop. Only a prop, but a good prop. And Luke Brooks, we're saying back up there. So
I think Luke Brooks can be, as you discussed, he's going to be picked up anywhere. I think he could be picked up in the 10th round. I think that's about the highest place I pick him up. But he's one of those guys that will probably be picked up before round 25.
If you're picking him up in round 10, I hope he's your first pick up at 7, and you're a brave man.
Yeah.
If that's your first pick. But he's a player with potential. He may show it.
If you had say you picked out Chris Sando, and you weren't 100% with Chris Sando, would you then pick up a Luke Brooks?
That's where I'm saying that. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is
so
if you're not happy with that first pick up,
you've got your truck and trailer, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You handcuff a player. And we've talked about with the handcuffs. A handcuff is taking all the kickers for a team so that you're guaranteed to have a kicker in the week. Looking, if you've got a guy you know is one of your top line players, taking a very low pick on his backup so that you've always got a fullback for a certain team. there's those options you can do to help your odds with top line players you take, and can keep you later in the rounds. When you lose a player, you've got that player ready to go, and he might not score you points, but that's why you've got extras on your bench, and you can use them that way.
A lot to think about, Mark.
So close to the season starting and just a few weeks away. Draft starting to be available on the bench. Looking forward to it. Get onto NRL CEO, get some advice, get that preview document so you know what, and get some good tips, really, and some surprising players that have got stats you didn't know about. That's been our Friday night podcast here.
All done, mate.
Mark, Smash and Mallard.
Mike, Bombay Night Stalkers Keys.
Thanks, Jim Beam.
We're done.
We're done.